The call came at 8:23 a.m. on a Wednesday morning while I was reviewing the final acquisition paperwork for Morrison Manufacturing, my family's struggling industrial business. My assistant had placed the documents on my desk an hour earlier. Final signatures needed for the Morrison deal, Mr. Chen. What my assistant didn't know was that Morrison Manufacturing had been started by my grandfather 60 years ago, built by my father for 30 years, and was now being run into the ground by my older brother Kevin, who'd taken over 5 years ago when Dad had his heart attack. Daniel. Mom's voice was shaky, desperate. I need to talk to you. What's wrong, Mom? We're losing the business. Some anonymous company made an offer we can't refuse. Your father's in the hospital again. The stress is killing him. Kevin's been trying to fight it, but our lawyers say we have no choice. I set down my pen and looked out at the Chicago skyline. 40 floors below, the city bustled with activity. Half the construction cranes visible from my window belonged to projects funded by Chen Enterprises, the investment empire I'd built while my family thought I was still trying to figure out my life. Mom, slow down. What kind of offer? $67 million. Some company called Meridian Capital Partners. They say they want to modernize the facility, but Kevin thinks they're just going to strip it and sell the land. Meridian Capital Partners was one of my subsidiary companies. I'd been quietly acquiring struggling manufacturing firms across the Midwest, modernizing them, and turning them into profitable employee-owned cooperatives. The Morrison deal was supposed to be my masterpiece, saving the family business without them knowing it was me. How long do you have to decide? That's just it, we already decided. We signed yesterday. Kevin fought it for months, but we're $3 million behind on loans, the equipment needs replacing, and we can't compete with overseas manufacturing anymore. Mom, I need to tell you something. Can you help us find out who this Meridian company is? Maybe you could use your computer skills to research them online. My computer skills. That's what she called the data analytics degree I'd earned from Northwestern before dropping out of the family business. What she didn't know was that those computer skills had helped me build a $4.2 billion investment portfolio. Mom, I know who Meridian Capital Partners is. You do? Who are they? Are they going to shut us down? Mom, I am Meridian Capital Partners. The line went completely silent. I could hear the hospital sounds in the background. Dad was back in the cardiac unit, probably from the stress of losing the business he'd spent his life building. Daniel, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm saying I bought the family business. I'm the anonymous buyer. That's impossible. You work at some startup downtown. You live in a studio apartment. You drive that old Honda. Mom, I haven't worked at a startup in 7 years. I own 12 companies. The Honda is because I don't need to impress anyone with what I drive. Daniel, this isn't funny. Your father is sick, we're losing everything, and you're making jokes. I'm not making jokes. Check your bank account. The $67 million payment should have cleared this morning. I heard her typing on her phone. Oh my God. Daniel, how is this possible? It's a long story. Can you put me on speaker? I want Dad to hear this too. Your father's sleeping. Mom, wake him up. Trust me on this. A few minutes later, Dad's weak voice came through the phone. Danny? Your mother says you bought our company? That doesn't make sense, son. Dad, remember when I left Morrison Manufacturing 7 years ago? When you said I was throwing away my future to chase pipe dreams. You wanted to do something with computers. I thought you were wasting your business degree. I wasn't wasting it. I was using it. Dad, those pipe dreams turned into Chen Enterprises. We manage investments worth over $4 billion. $4 billion. Dad's voice was stronger now. Daniel, that's not possible. Dad, do you remember the Henderson Steel acquisition that was in the business news 2 years ago? The one where some private equity firm saved a failing company and turned it into an employee cooperative. Of course. It was a brilliant move. Saved 800 jobs. That was me. Chen Enterprises bought Henderson Steel, invested $30 million in new equipment, and gave the workers partial ownership. It's now one of the most profitable steel companies in the region. You did that. I've done that 12 times. Bought struggling manufacturing companies, modernized them, shared ownership with the workers. It's my specialty. But why didn't you tell us? Because every time I tried to explain what I was building, you told me to come back to Morrison and learn the real business. You thought I was playing with computers while you were running a serious company. Mom jumped back into the conversation. Daniel, if you own all these companies, why were you living in that tiny apartment? Because I was investing every dollar back into the business. Because I learned from Grandpa that you build wealth by saving it, not spending it. But you said you were working for a tech startup. I said I was working on technology solutions for manufacturing companies. I just never mentioned that I owned the company providing those solutions. Dad was quiet for a long moment. Son, are you telling me that the business we thought was failing, you saved it? Dad, Morrison Manufacturing wasn't failing because of market conditions. It was failing because it needed investment in modern equipment and better management systems. Kevin's been doing his best. Kevin's been trying to run a 21st century business with 1990s thinking. Dad, when's the last time Morrison invested in new machinery? We bought that new press 3 years ago. A used press from 1987. Dad, your competitors are using robotics, AI-guided quality control, just-in-time inventory management. Kevin's been trying to compete using methods that were outdated when you started the company. So what happens now? Now we modernize everything. I'm investing $40 million in new equipment, another $15 million in facility upgrades, and $10 million in worker training programs. $65 million on top of the $67 million you paid for the company? Dad, this is what I do. I buy struggling companies and turn them into success stories. Morrison Manufacturing is about to become the most advanced facility in the Midwest. And Kevin can stay if he wants to learn new management techniques. If he's willing to work with consultants, if he's open to changing how things are done. He's not going to like taking orders from his little brother. He won't be taking orders from me. He'll be taking guidance from the best manufacturing consultants in the country. I'm bringing in the same team that turned around Henderson Steel. Mom was crying again, but this time it sounded like relief. Daniel, I don't understand how you built all this without us knowing. Mom, I tried to tell you. Remember 3 years ago when I said I was expanding into the automotive supply chain? You said that was nice and asked when I was going to settle down and give you grandchildren. I thought you meant you got a new job. I meant I acquired 3 companies that supply parts to Ford and General Motors. I was trying to share my success with you, but you weren't really listening. We thought you were struggling. You thought I was struggling because I wasn't buying expensive things or bragging about money. You equated success with flashy spending. Dad's voice was getting stronger. Daniel, why didn't you just tell us directly? Why all the secrecy? Because I wanted you to be proud of me for who I was, not what I owned. I wanted you to see that leaving the family business was the right choice before you knew how much money I'd made. And we failed that test. You failed to see that I was building something meaningful. But you passed the test that mattered more. What test was that? You raised me with the values that made this success possible. Grandpa's work ethic, your integrity, Mom's compassion for workers. Everything I've accomplished comes from what you taught me. I heard Dad taking deep breaths, probably trying to process everything. Son, what happens to the workers? Jim Peterson's been with us for 28 years. Maria Santos started when she was 18. She's got kids in college. Dad, that's exactly why I bought the company. Jim Peterson is going to become the plant supervisor. He knows more about efficient production than anyone. Maria Santos is going to head up the new quality control department. Every current employee gets to keep their job, plus profit sharing, plus stock options. Stock options. Dad, I'm converting Morrison Manufacturing into a worker cooperative. After 5 years, the employees will own 40% of the company. After 10 years, they'll own 60%. You're giving away ownership? I'm sharing success. These people built Morrison Manufacturing with their hands and their dedication. They deserve to benefit when the company succeeds. Daniel, Mom said softly, your grandfather would be so proud. I hope so. I built this whole thing using the principles he taught me. Treat workers fairly, invest in quality, think long-term instead of chasing quick profits. But you're only 29 years old. How did you learn to do all this? I learned by making mistakes on smaller deals first. I learned by hiring people smarter than me. I learned by listening to workers who understand their jobs better than any consultant. And you did all this while we thought you were unsuccessful? I did all this because you thought I was unsuccessful. Every time someone told me I'd made a mistake leaving Morrison, I bought another company. Every time someone suggested I wasn't living up to my potential, I proved them wrong. My assistant knocked on my office door. I gestured her in. Mr. Chen, the Morrison Manufacturing management team is here for the transition meeting. I covered the phone. Give me 5 more minutes. Dad, I need to go. I'm meeting with your management team in a few minutes to discuss the transition plan. Our management team? You mean Kevin's going to find out about this today? Kevin, Jim Peterson, Maria Santos, and the department heads. I want to explain the modernization plan and get their input on implementation. Kevin's going to be shocked. Kevin's going to be challenged. This is his chance to learn modern manufacturing management or step aside for someone who can. Daniel, what should we tell people? How do we explain that our son bought our company? Tell them the truth. Tell them your son learned the business from the ground up, built expertise in manufacturing turnarounds, and came home to save the family legacy. But people will ask why we didn't know. Tell them you raised a son who was more interested in building something meaningful than in bragging about building it. After hanging up, I sat in my office for a few minutes, looking at the Morrison Manufacturing file. Inside were employment records for 63 people who'd devoted their careers to my family's business. Financial projections showing how the company could return to profitability within 18 months. Architectural plans for facility improvements that would make Morrison the most modern manufacturing plant in the region. But more than that, it contained my plan to prove that successful business didn't have to mean abandoning workers or communities. Morrison Manufacturing was going to become a model for how companies could modernize while maintaining their values. My assistant buzzed the intercom. Mr. Chen, should I send in the Morrison team? Give me 1 more minute. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Chen Enterprises portfolio. 12 manufacturing companies, all profitable, all employee-owned cooperatives. Henderson Steel, Midwest Precision Tools, Great Lakes Automotive, River Valley Electronics. Each one a former failing business that now provided good jobs and shared ownership with workers. Morrison Manufacturing was going to be number 13. And unlike the others, this one was personal. Send them in. The Morrison management team filed into my conference room. 5 people who'd worked for my family for decades, plus Kevin, who looked confused and slightly annoyed at being summoned to a downtown meeting. Kevin, I said, standing up. Jim, Maria, everyone. Thank you for coming. Kevin looked around the executive conference room with obvious suspicion. Danny, what's this about? Mom said something about the new owners wanting to meet with us, but she was crying and not making much sense. Have a seat, everyone. Jim Peterson, our plant foreman, was looking at the view from the 42nd floor. Danny, this is some office. You working for these new owner people? Something like that. Jim, before we start, I want you to know that your job is safe. Everyone's job is safe. Maria Santos leaned forward. Danny, Kevin told us the new company might shut down the plant. Is that true? No, Maria. The plant's not shutting down. It's expanding. Kevin frowned. Danny, how do you know what the new owners are planning? And why are we meeting in your office instead of theirs? Because this is their office. Kevin, I need to tell you something and I need you to listen carefully. What? I'm the new owner. I bought Morrison Manufacturing. The room went completely silent. Kevin stared at me like I'd grown a second head. That's impossible, Kevin said finally. You work at some tech company. You don't have $67 million. Kevin, I haven't worked for anyone else in 7 years. I own Chen Enterprises. We specialize in acquiring and modernizing manufacturing companies. Jim Peterson spoke up. Danny, Chen Enterprises is that company that saved Henderson Steel. They were in all the trade magazines. That's right, Jim. You're telling us you own Chen Enterprises? Maria asked. I founded it 7 years ago. Morrison Manufacturing is our 13th acquisition. Kevin stood up abruptly. This is insane. Danny, you live in a studio apartment. You drive a 15-year-old Honda. You can't possibly own a company worth billions. Kevin, sit down. Let me explain something to you. I don't want to sit down. I want to know what kind of game you're playing. I'm not playing games. Jim, Maria, you've heard of Henderson Steel, right? Of course, Jim said. They went from nearly bankrupt to most profitable steel company in Ohio. Everyone in manufacturing knows that story. I bought Henderson Steel for $42 million, invested $30 million in new equipment, and gave the workers ownership stakes. Last year they generated $68 million in revenue and distributed $4 million in profit sharing to employees. Maria was staring at me. You did that. My team did that. And we're going to do the same thing here. Kevin sat back down heavily. Danny, assuming this is true, and I'm not saying it is, why didn't you tell us? Because every time I tried to explain what I was building, you told me I was wasting my education. You said I should come back to Morrison and learn the real business. You were working on computers. I was working on data analytics for manufacturing efficiency. I was learning how to optimize production, reduce waste, improve quality control. Everything I learned, I applied to turning around failing companies. But you never said you owned a company. Kevin, 3 years ago I told the family I was expanding into automotive supply chains. Dad said that was nice and asked if I was dating anyone. We thought you meant you got a new job at an auto parts company. I meant I bought 3 auto parts companies. Jim Peterson was shaking his head in amazement. Danny, your grandfather would be so proud. You saved the family business. Jim, I saved our business. All of us. But now we need to modernize everything. What does that mean? Maria asked. I pulled out the architectural plans. It means $40 million in new equipment. Robotic assembly lines, AI-guided quality control, computer-managed inventory systems. Robots. Kevin looked skeptical. That's going to eliminate jobs. Kevin, robots eliminate repetitive tasks. They create jobs for people who can program them, maintain them, and manage more complex processes. Maria, how would you like to supervise a quality control department with real-time data monitoring? I'd love that. But I don't know anything about computers. You know everything about quality control. We'll train you on the computer systems. Jim, how would you like to manage a plant where machines predict their own maintenance needs? That would prevent half the breakdowns we deal with now. Exactly. Kevin, how would you like to manage a company that's profitable enough to share ownership with workers? Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Danny, if this is real, if you really bought the company, what happens to me? That depends on you. You can learn modern manufacturing management, work with our consulting team, and help build Morrison into a showcase facility. Or you can step aside and let someone else do it. And if I choose to learn? Then you become the general manager of the most advanced manufacturing plant in the Midwest, with profit sharing and stock options like everyone else. Stock options. Kevin, in 5 years, every employee will own part of this company. In 10 years, the workers will be majority owners. But it's going to be worth 10 times what it's worth today. Jim Peterson grinned. So instead of just working for Morrison Manufacturing, we're going to own Morrison Manufacturing? You're going to own a piece of it, Jim. You've earned it. Maria had tears in her eyes. Danny, I've been working here for 16 years. I never thought I'd be able to retire with any kind of security. Maria, if you stay for 20 years total, you'll retire with a pension, profit sharing, and stock value that'll let you live comfortably. Kevin looked around the room at his coworkers, then back at me. Danny, I owe you an apology. We all do. You don't owe me anything, Kevin. Yes, I do. I've been running Dad's company into the ground while you were building an empire. I thought I was the responsible one. Kevin, you were trying to preserve what Dad built. I'm trying to evolve it. There's a difference. So what happens now? Now we get to work. The modernization starts next month. New equipment arrives in 6 weeks. Training programs begin immediately. And the family? The family learns that sometimes the biggest risks lead to the biggest rewards. Dad took a risk when he expanded Grandpa's small shop into a real manufacturing company. I took a risk when I left to build my own business. Now we're combining those risks into something bigger than either of us could have built alone. 6 months later, I stood in the modernized Morrison Manufacturing facility, watching robotic assembly lines work alongside human technicians. The plant that had been losing money for 5 years was now operating at 97% efficiency and had a 6-month backlog of orders. Dad had recovered from his heart problems and was working part-time as a consultant, teaching new employees about the company's history and values. Kevin had embraced the new management systems and was being considered for promotion to regional manager when we opened our second facility. Most importantly, the workers who devoted their careers to Morrison Manufacturing were now sharing in its success. Jim Peterson had used his first profit-sharing check to pay off his mortgage. Maria Santos was sending her youngest daughter to college without student loans. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Saw the article in Manufacturing today about Morrison's turnaround. Your father cried reading it. We're so proud of you. I replied, thanks, Mom. Grandpa's legacy lives on. Because that's what it had always been about. Not proving I could build something bigger than the family business, but proving I could honor its values while taking it to the next level. The family business was saved. The family was back together. And 63 workers now owned a piece of something they'd helped build with their own hands. Sometimes the best way to honor the past is to transform it into something even better for the future.